Yo, you know somebody that actually make good music, man? Lizzo.
Lizzo?
Yo?
I can't get past the fact that she looks like the She's got a very pretty face, but she keeps showing her body on. Like, come on, man. I mean, listen, I ain't the most in shape in the world, but I still, you know, when you funny and you got swagger and confidence and you decent looking, I think I'm at least handsome, you get. But a woman that's built like a plate of mashed potatoes is in trouble.
You know what? I'm not gonna say nothing. They be like, Lizzo, why don't you clap back? Why don't you clap back? Cause bitch, I'm winning, ho.
Hey yo girl, welcome back to my corner of the internet. If this is your first time ever seeing my face, my name is Herbie Revolis. My pronouns are he, she, him, or hers, and hers. The thing is, that does mean that I wear pants, skirts, pearls, and purses. Today I really wanted us to have a conversation around the way someone like a Lizzo, and Lizzo herself, right, because she's not just a subject matter, she's actually an individual, is forced to engage with the world, and then the more difficult part of the conversation, the way the world has been socialized to engage with Lizzo and her body. I use the term forced intentionally because we understand Lizzo, the brand, as a loud, bodacious, confident, and self-assured individual. Although she is a human being at the end of the day, so I'm sure she has much more emotional range than that. We, as consummate consumers and people who inhabit the internet space, really only understand artists, and anyone really who we don't know personally, from the brand or the persona that they present online. And this is the way Lizzo has opted to present herself, and I do believe that it is true to who she is. With this being her public persona, and maybe even her real personality, right? While simultaneously existing in a bigger body, there's so many sources of indoctrinated hate for us to pull from. We already know that we are taught to abhor fatness. It is something to be ridiculed, often through the guise of these pseudo health concerns that are utilizing racist and nonsensical metrics of health, i.e. the BMI scale. It is something that bigger bodied folk are taught to be bashful and apologetic about. And above all, it is certainly not something that should be glamorized. Well, Lizzo radically opposes all of those societal norms by just existing in her body as herself. She isn't shy and she doesn't make herself small by apologizing for her shape and pushing dieting scams that aren't gonna work for the vast majority of people. According to Psychology Today, weight loss attempts on average, right, last 4 weeks for women and 6 weeks for men. But also in addition to that, dieting has not really been linked to weight loss, right? Not sustainable weight loss at least. But it is linked to sustained anxiety and depression and actual binging when it comes to food. So that's a whole different topic about if you actually want people to lose weight, dieting is really not the way, and dieting culture is really problematic. But again, another topic, another video. Lizzo actually strikes a delicate balance of embracing who she is, right, and bearing her body on the public stage, despite the critique that I'm sure she's gonna be met with. But she's also honest as a human being about how sometimes those insults that you are hurling and lobbing at her, it hurts and it impacts her.
I have people who have something mean to say about you. I'm working this hard, my tolerance gets lower. My patience is lower, I'm more sensitive, and it gets to me.
Honestly, there's nothing wrong about embracing who you fully are, unless you are a marginalized identity. In a fatphobic and anti-black society, women are constantly met with violence. Women of color are met with violence. Black women, and fat people of all shapes, sizes, genders, and sexual proclivities are met with violence. But an insurmountable amount of violence is being lobbed at fat black women in particular. Black women who refuse to give into the mammy trope, as Lizzo refuses. And that trope in particular has been used as a social, political, and economic structure, and in many ways a prison for black women, right? It is a trope that suggests that fat black women are nothing more than these asexual maternal-like beings who are to meet their bodies with disdain. We're gonna get into it, baby. We are gonna get into it today. But first, I have a disclaimer, okay? And I really want you guys to take me seriously because I want to establish where I fit in this conversation. Obviously, I'm not inhabiting a bigger body. I am what a lot of people would call a straight-sized individual, or really, I'm just a skinny person, right? And so I haven't been the most comfortable with using the term fat, right? Not because there's anything inherently depreciatory about the existence of being a fat person, right? But because it has been used almost exclusively in mainstream conversations as a pejorative, as something that is to be weaponized, and often weaponized by people in bodies like mine against people in bodies like Lizzo's. Even more complex, I think the term fat has been used as a euphemism to to violate people in a myriad of othering and discriminatory ways and it's associated with a myriad of othering and discriminatory ideas, which is why often when I'm having conversations around people inhabiting bigger bodies, I usually use the term bigger body. I don't know how a lot of people feel about plus size, or I would just say the girl is bodied, honey. She's bodied down, because I want it to be understood that my intention is not to be depreciatory. However, I have been opting to tune into conversations by self-proclaimed fat activists who I think, and this is just my perspective and what I take from what they're saying, are working to neutralize the word, among many other things, but just with regard to this, right, have been working to neutralize the word and use it as a kind of provocative descriptor to grab hold of people's attention and galvanize people to hopefully awaken us and them to the issues faced by people inhabiting larger bodies. And on the other hand, I don't want to dignify or placate fat phobes' agenda by finding new and interesting ways to describe people, to describe fat folk in a way that is most palatable, by using socially acceptable terms like pleasantly plump or big boned. Like, there is nothing inherently wrong with being a bigger person, a person inhabiting a fat body, but as a person who is straight sized, as a smaller bodied individual, I never know how to strike that delicate balance. So what I'm doing right now is kind of just setting my intention so that you can better understand my intent. I cannot help really my impact, but I can establish my intent. If anyone is offended or will be offended throughout the series of this video or throughout the continuation of this video, my apologies in advance. I'm never too big to offer an apology. My intention is to uplift a community and an experience that I'm becoming increasingly learned about, right? And I'm trying to understand what allyship looks like in this space, in this iteration for this marginalized group. So hopefully that bleeds through while we talk today. Just had to say that because put some respect on the children's name. Thank you, Bookie. Thanks, folks. So the first thing that I want to get into is the inherent difference between the intraracial conversation surrounding fat phobia within communities of color, but particularly within the Black community, and then the interracial conversations around fat phobia from the Black vantage point. Now, I did start this video off by playing Aries Spears' clip where he was saying incredibly fat phobic things about Lizzo while inhabiting a fat body, and we're going to get into him. But for me, the first thing that was stricken, or that what my mind went to, right, is like, how would this conversation have gone if it was a person in a white body? What are the dynamics of this conversation? What are the dynamics of fat phobia and the kinds of fat phobia being lobbed at Lizzo in particular, because she is so visible and so beautiful and so successful? As a Black person, right, we are most likely to be overweight, the most likely demographic to be overweight or considered obese, and Black women are at a disparate number, right, in terms of being categorized as overweight or obese. A study done by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Minority Health found that 4 in every 5 African American women would be found overweight or obese. But also, Black men are not that far behind. The same study found that 70.6% of Black men would be found overweight or obese. Those numbers are problematic for a number of reasons because of the way that we understand obesity and our programmed reaction to always associate health with weight, something that we have to actively and consciously unlearn, because it's not the full story. It's actually not even half the story. If we actually want to look at the factors that are contributing to some of the health disparities within the Black community, you don't need a scale, babe. Trust me. You don't need a scale. Well, I think we have to continue the conversations that have been happening so often on corners of the internet like this, right? Adequate access to good healthcare, right? If any healthcare at all. We need to start having conversations about Black folk living in food deserts, right? Without access to adequate nutrition. Or what about the healthcare system's deep-rooted desire to misdiagnose fat folk with eating disorders without doing any alternative health screening? And these are the kinds of health screenings that they would run on a thinner patient like myself. I think that compounds itself on Black women when we look at Black women's relationship to the healthcare system. We already know so many studies have been done and so many videos here on this platform have been done describing the ways that when Black women say they are in pain, they are not believed. And you know, the doctors, the way they're trained to engage with Black folk and Black women in particular. This puts Black women at a disparate disadvantage. And I think also something that we could look at again, instead of just looking at the weight of it all, could we consider that maybe the average African body and frame, and there's so much nuance in this, right? But just the average African body and frame might just be naturally larger and fuller than the European body and frame. Food for thought. So given these givens, when white folks lob fatphobic slurs at black folk, I think that it's really just a metric of white supremacist fatphobic indoctrination that they've created and they sustain. The children are just doing what they do best. Also, when we understand that black folks are 1.3 times more likely to be deemed obese than the white community, we can understand that they don't engage with fatness at the same frequency or as often as we do.
Editing Herbie here. I just wanted to clarify this. I want to take something back. Yeah, I guess I can do that. In reviewing the numbers, it is more likely for a white man to be obese or considered obese than a black man. And when you look at the numbers, you know, in each community, I think both of us are engaging with people who live in bigger bodies frequently. But I do still stand by the frequency with which they engage with black women's fat bodies is less frequent, especially because their numbers in the black community white women is lower than our numbers of, you know, big-bodied black women. And so that enables them to discard and not apply the same care and attention, right, for fat black women in the way that they already wanted to do for straight-sized black women.
I think the question a lot of times so many white people have is like, how dare you defy this beauty standard? How dare you be a fat black woman and also be bodacious and unashamed and affirmed in your fatness? And most interestingly, I think the question becomes, how dare you oppose this white supremacist metric of beauty and then be glamorized for that opposition? And this so often is the case of fatphobia, the kind of fatphobia that is lobbed at Lizzo. Because they're coming from a space of, how dare you have the social prowess to be a happy fat black woman? How dare society give you space to accrue rewards, both financial and social capital, in that body? How dare you demand us to contend with your happiness and your fatness and the fullness of your bliggity black ass life? This is not the way it should be. You should be attempting to prove your commitment to disciplining your body, restraining your personality, and dulling your blackness so that I can live a better life. Lizzo had said, fuck you and fuck that. Come on! You think Harriet Tubman had a nice shiny fucking dress on with a big body when she was taking slaves? To freedom! I'll tell you this, Harriet Tubman definitely wasn't a size 2. Smooches.
Queens don't always talk and look nice and polished. Being a queen has more to do with having balls.
No, but seriously, I think when we're having intra-communal and intraracial conversations around fatphobia, it is particularly sinister, right? Because we don't divest from those relics and those tools of fatphobic white supremacist ideology. Those things come into the black community, and this is how we navigate interpersonal relationships with other black people, with fatphobic ideals. So when we still live in a world where black women and black men are still the most likely to partner one another, right? And there's not that much data on this, but people across the gender and the sexual proclivity spectrum are within the black space are still, in my view, more likely to partner each other. And that's almost entirely anecdotal from what I see and empirical, right? From what I see on my social media page and in my personal life. My friends, and I have friends across the gender and the sexual proclivity spectrum where most of the time we dating niggas. Niggas is dating niggas! That black people, but in particular black women, are more likely to be deemed by these white supremacist pseudo-scientific measures, right? It becomes disparately unsafe for black women to engage in desirability politics and intimate relationships or even platonic relationships with other men or even other women. Because as Virgie Tovar often says, fatphobia is still a widely accepted form of discrimination. I think there's a taboo surrounding a lot of other forms of discrimination, but when it comes to fatphobia, there's still this kind of acceptance around that. And I think additionally, we understand that fat women are not met with the same kind of care and softness and the feminization that we give to straight-sized women or even people in straight-sized bodies. I think another thing that we understand but we often don't articulate is that largeness is so often associated with dominance, terror, and masculinity. And the same goes for blackness, and in particular, dark blackness, right? We associate black folk and black people, dark things, with dominance, terror, and masculinity because of the way that they are stripped of their womanhood and the protective nature that we would approach any other straight-sized woman of really any race, right? Because it's a double whammy when you're a black woman and when you're a fat black woman. It is not socially the same thing for you to be a fat woman as it is for you to be a fat man. I think that's why the comedian Aries Spears felt empowered to lob fat-phobic jokes and remarks at Lizzo. Not only because he exists in a bigger body, but also because he could ignore the kind of fat-phobic comments that were being lobbed back at him, right? Because it's not the same thing to be a fat black man as it is to be a fat black woman, when those traits are associated with dominance, terror, and masculinity, traits that a man can somehow use to their advantage, but a woman is just dehumanized. You get what I'm saying? Not that those things should be associated with bigger bodies, because they are just as nuanced and complex as we are as straight-sized people, right? But there is certain stereotypes do work in people's favor, right? We have to be honest about that.
I'm 32 years in this game and I ain't never got no meow. That's hilarious.
And also, girl, can we tiptoe to the fact that how y'all coming to Lizzo's defense against fatphobia and calling Aries Spears a fat ass? Can we be honest about that, guys? How are y'all coming to her defense and lobbing fatphobic critiques? And you know what else? As a hood bitch, I always say this, as a hood academic, I always understand filleting, right? Sometimes you don't even think about it. You like, girl, I got your back. Shut your fat right? You want to give all of the things. You want to give all of the things because it's not really a consideration of the fact that you are using the same ideology and dehumanizing language to support your friend who was just dehumanized by that thing, right? It's more so like I'm speaking specifically to him. I'm not speaking to the whole community. And I think a lot of times in the hood, we make separations like that where we make intraracial jokes and intracommunal jokes about communities that we're a part of just because I know that this is going to get you together. Girl, my intention is not to make a general statement about all people in this community. My intention is to fillet your ass. I am going to fillet you. I am going to saute you. I am going to bake your ass. I'm going to pop you back in the grease. And I'm going to fish fry that ass. But that can be problematic. You know, me in my highest form of thinking, with my highest form of emotional intelligence, I understand that is not the way, the truth, or the light, babe. We gotta do better. This is not gonna be a fully extensive video surrounding fatphobia. I just wanted to come on I wanted to speak to allies who are from another community, right? Other communities, not communities of color, but also I wanted to speak to us as a black community and say, here's why I think we should care, right? I think also, and I think this speaks to my own personal connection to the conversation of why I, as a straight-sized or a smaller-bodied individual, wants to come and defend a bigger-bodied girl. A part of how I engage with fat activism and where I feel like I fit is, one, empathy. Duh. As human beings, we are instinctually selfish. A similar consciousness happens when, you know, people who exist in bigger bodies are questioning allyship, right? It comes from the same place of, you don't really understand what it's like to experience this existence, so are you really invested for real? Because it's the understanding that people are only invested in the things that impact them. And to that point, it is my selfishness that compels me to fat activism. Being a person who creates content and conversations around the existence of black folk and black people in general, but black women and effeminate queer folk in particular, I understand that every form of marginalization, even the ones that don't affect me personally, are linked to my own. Anti-blackness works in tandem with fatphobia, and fatphobia works in conjunction with homophobia. These things are not mutually exclusive. We cannot create a utopian world free from anti-blackness and homophobia, and free from the predatory practices of cis heteronormative behavior and ideals. That world can't exist in a world where fatphobia is running rampant. Because as the Jewish poet Emma Lazarus said, and I think it was popularized a lot through Maya Angelou, the truth is, until we're all free, none of us are free. I don't know, I just feel like it requires no emotional intelligence or no emotional labor to be selfish, but it requires a lot of emotional intelligence and a lot of emotional labor to be empathetic. With that being said, that is all I have for you today. I don't know, but this is the most truest thing to me, or the most true thing to me. I am in a constant state of practice. And so are you. You can never fail when you're in a constant state of practice. I love you. Bye, girl. Mwah. Oh, so watch one of these videos. I never put a video here. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get better at it. But watch one of these videos. But also somebody referred to themselves as being a part of the Herbie Hive. I kind of just thought you guys are my homegirls, my friends online. But I like the Herbie Hive. How do y'all feel about the Herbie Hive? If you still watch all the way to the end, let me know. I love you. I gotta go for real. Bye.